What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Coach Blac, your internet relationship and breakup coach. Today's topic, how to make your ex fear that they will lose you forever so that they break no contact sooner. Now, before we jump into the topic, I want you to know this. This is not a magic trick. This is just based on the science of human nature. And if you understand the concept truthfully and deeply, this is something that you can implement. It will be difficult. It's not easy. But if you understand it, this is something that you can actually do to turn things around. Now, let's start with this. Fundamentally, human beings only do things for two reasons. And if you've watched this channel, you've heard that statement before. We do things to avoid pain and to gain pleasure. If you track anything that you ever do in life, you can trace it back to one of these primary motivators. It's just how we have evolved as human beings and as a species. And so any action that you take, it's usually coming from a place of needing to do this action either to avoid pain or to gain pleasure. So, for example, why do you go to your job even when you don't like said job? Right? You go to the job because you have to make an income so you can pay your bills and so on and so forth. Why do you avoid doing your homework, but the night before, right? You spend all of your time and energy doing whatever it takes to complete the process so that you actually have homework to turn in, so you actually get a good grade or so you don't fail the class, right? So whatever action we take as human beings stems from a need to avoid pain or to gain pleasure, right? And you can think of things on the flip side of that coin. What are some actions that we do to gain pleasure? Well, junk food. Right? Because if it was just about surviving, you'll eat only things that are healthy. But because junk food is delicious, there's a lot of pleasure in that. So fundamentally, the only way your ex will come back is if they feel enough pain from the loss of the relationship. That is the only way. There's no other thing that's going to draw them back like their own self-interest. And so when they are feeling the feelings of pain and loss, that's when you start to get action. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, how do I make this happen? I'm going to explain to you with a quick illustration. So years ago, I actually bought this house, all right? And I remember going through the home buying process. It was super stressful, right? If you bought a home, I'm sure you could certainly relate. And it was the first home I ever bought. So there's just so many things that I didn't know. And one of the things that I didn't know a lot about was home security systems. See, these days you have the DIY home security, like the Ring doorbell camera, if you've ever heard of those. But prior to those types of things, they had like the ADT and Guardian, right? Where you put the little signpost outside your home so people know that your home is protected. All right, but these days those things are so old school, no one uses them. But so at the time I got this, thing which was high tech, and before long it just, kind of phased out. So I didn't keep the subscription. So it's been sitting on my wall. It's not functioning because I have a DIY version now, but anyway, it's still sitting on the wall. It doesn't do anything. I don't set the alarm with that specific one. So recently, what happened is it started to beep just out of nowhere. I would just hear like a faint little beep, and it was kind of like, what is that? It might have taken me a day. Don't laugh. It might have taken me a day or two to figure out where it was coming from. I literally have a lot of little tech things in my home, and so it took me a while to figure out where it was coming from. And I hate to admit this, I'm not the most handy person that ever existed. I'll just leave it at that. So when I figured out where the culprit was, right, I go into the thing and I'm trying to shut it off. So I quickly realized it's a low battery alarm, right? So like I said, that thing's been sitting there for years, not really using it. So the battery needs to be replaced or something. But again, I'm not the most handy person. So at the time, I couldn't really figure out how to, take the thing off and, replace the battery. So I'm just kind of looking for a way to bypass the alarm. Is there a way I can silence this thing? Is there a way I can shut the alarm off? So I'm checking. And I didn't really find anything, but I noticed that, when I was going in there, I hit some buttons, I hit silent, and it stopped sounding. I didn't hear the noise anymore. And then about a day or 2 days later, it started beeping again. But again, it's just like a faint little beep. Like it was a little more intense than before, but it was so sporadic too. It will beep like once every hour. So it was annoying, but it was just kind of like, okay, whatever. I still was peeking in the box and trying to figure it out, but I couldn't. So this goes on for about a week at this point. And I'm telling you, I'm watching movies, I'm working, I'm having coaching calls. I'm just living my life. I'm hanging out with friends, and every so often I'll hear that little annoying beep. So earlier this week, out of nowhere, that beep just gradually started becoming more intense. It started to get louder and it started to become more frequent. And I remember this time I went to that box and I was definitely more dedicated. I'm hitting everything, trying to figure out how to shut this thing off. I'm like, I gotta call these, they need to come out here and fix this. And so that was my plan. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna call them later. I go to the gym, I come back home, and this thing is going off. I cannot work. I cannot do anything because the noise is so frequent. It's literally every 2 seconds, beep, and it's louder. Now I got creative. Okay. I went into the back. I found my toolbox. I started tinkering and figuring things out. And it really was not that hard. But all that was necessary, I needed enough pain. I needed enough frustration to really dig deep and figure out how I was going to relieve myself from this annoyance. And literally, as soon as I put my mind to it, it was pretty straightforward to figure out. I took the thing off, took the battery out. It was still beeping. I took, a lot of the wires, I took them off of the circuit board, and it shut off. Peace and quiet, and all was well in my home. And so, as you've probably gathered from that story, as we illustrate the need for your ex to feel a level of pain, okay, to ever come back to fix the relationship. And so a lot of times, no contact by itself is enough to generate those feelings of fear and uncertainty. And I've made several videos about this, and you can certainly watch. I'm going to leave links to some of my favorite videos about those concepts. But here's the key difference. For a lot of people doing no contact, it's like your ex, like no contact is having an effect on your ex, right? It's that subtle beep that I was getting about a week ago, but it's still tolerable. It's not painful enough. And that's the part where a lot of people get frustrated. What happens is you have to wait and trust that it's working. A lot of people don't. So your ex is getting these little beeps. It's affecting them. Trust me. But what tends to happen a lot of times is that when they're getting that beep, there's going to be a reaction at some point. This is where you may get the breadcrumbs. And some people get this, all right? But then you start to fail those tests. There's two main actions that you can take, essentially. We want to increase the frequency of the beeping, right? Using that analogy. And we want to make it as loud as possible. We want your ex to feel enough frustration from your absence Did they start to act like I was? I'm telling you, for a brief moment, I was the most handy person you ever met. There's two main things that you can do alongside no contact, right? So one of the things that we talk about is competition anxiety, right? This is a factor. As human beings, we have evolved as a species to protect our investment, especially when it comes to romantic interests, right? If you look at the studies, it's actually said that jealousy, right, the act of behaving jealous, especially in the context of a relationship, is a pattern or a behavior, a reaction that was created to help us mate guard. And what that means is when our ancestors would have a hunch or a suspicion that their partner was potentially cheating or seeing someone else or garnering interest from someone else, there was always going to be a reaction because they had the need to protect their investment. So if you think about this from your ex's perspective, let me say this, I'm not telling you to try to make your ex jealous, follow me. So no contact on its own is already having an effect. They're going to be wondering, they're going to start to consider if you're moving on from them. This is natural, but sometimes that signal is still a little too faint, right? And so what needs to happen, right? Because there's nothing more powerful than your ex's mind and their own thoughts and their own worry. So the point is, what you're trying to convey covertly is that you are a high value person. Now, it's always better and easier when you're doing this naturally. So sure, this is something that can be fake, but if you're actually doing a lot of things that we talk about as far as working on yourself, going to the gym, looking better, making sure you're as fit as possible, sharing some of those things online on social media, right? Going to meetup groups, meeting new people, you're naturally going to put yourself in a position where people are attracted to you. Your ex as well. Your ex is going to be one of those people because you're actively increasing your value. You're actively increasing how desirable you are. And so as a byproduct of your growth, things are going to happen that will make your ex jealous. Maybe you do post something that someone else likes, or maybe as you network and you meet new people, right, someone follows you and you follow them back. Listen, I am not telling you to do these things proactively. I'm saying you focus on growing and these things will naturally happen as a byproduct. But because your ex is only human, they don't know the distinction. You're not literally spelling out, oh, this is someone I met from the gym. This is another, you're not spelling all these things out. You're just living your life, growing and becoming the best version of yourself. So if you combine no contact on its own with a fair, healthy level of competition anxiety, and let me make this clear, if you fake this, because there's certainly people who will fake this, you can just go add new people, right? You can just go, Photoshop some pictures that make yourself look better, but nothing is as powerful as the real thing. Okay, I'm reporting the reality of things as they are. So competition anxiety is a thing that will scare your ex, and it does motivate people to take action. But I don't want you to do it as a tactic. I want this to be a lifestyle. I'm just telling you that it does work. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing that also amplifies this to the final level, this is a key step. This is so important. Is boundary setting. See, what tends to happen as that beep starts going up, kind of like I was talking about, the first few times I went into that box, I was pushing I was doing all kinds of things. And the bottom line is it did not work. That alarm system did not stop going off. It continued to beep, and it got to a point where I had to do something about it. See, most people that I coach or that I talk to, they hear from their ex. The vast majority of people, if you do no contact alone, you will hear something from your ex. I can almost guarantee it. The vast majority of people. And so what happens is when your ex starts testing, they start pushing the buttons. They start posting stories and pictures of when you used to hang out. And maybe they even flat out just call you on the phone. They do all of these things. The biggest thing I see from people is that you're not willing to actually set a boundary like you mean it. Okay, now we've talked about the stages that should come before you setting a hard boundary. But essentially, if you've tried to meet up with your ex and they're not receptive, right? But you're still at the stage where they're still doing all of these little things to get your attention. Maybe they're sending messages, whatever it is that they're doing. You have to convey that you're willing to walk away if it comes down to it. So if they never agreed to hang out with you, but they're still calling and you say, hey, you know where I stand, all right? I'm not open to being friends. I'm not interested in this. So, I wish you well. If you're not willing to say things from a very strong position like that, they're never truly going to be anxious, because a lot of times I'll talk to people. They heard from their ex. The ex is not really allowing things to move forward. They've rejected dates, but the ex continues to contact them. They say that they're done, but then you talk to your ex for 20 minutes and 30 minutes and an hour. All of these things give your ex a false sense of security. It makes them more comfortable. So it's almost like the alarm starts creeping up. They talk to you and it goes back down. That's the problem. So you don't want to give your ex any kind of relief. You want to be as stubborn as that alarm system. If they don't figure it out, if they don't take real action, it's going to keep going off. They need to feel that. It's not just something that you say. That's why if you're hyper focused on tactics or a perfect text message, you're faking it. And anytime you get tested, you're more likely to fail their test. You're going to be too nice. You're going to be too invested. You're going to be too accommodating. And the alarm shuts off and they walk away again. Anyway, if you find this video helpful, do me a favor, please hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel as well so you don't miss any of the future videos that I put out. If you want to talk to me about your situation, click the first link in description and I will be glad to help you. If you have any thoughts, comments, drop them down in the comment section below. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.